Welcome to the Prop Queen Pod, everybody. I'm the Prop Queen, Ariel Epstein. Thank you, everybody, for joining today on this Tuesday. We've got a good show today. Of course, I've got my own thoughts on the NBA playoffs, Major League Baseball action. Huge slate today. A lot of NHL, too. Stanley Cup playoffs. Really excited because Pete Jensen from NHL Fantasy going to join the show, give us his thoughts on the NHL playoffs. He specializes in fantasy. He knows player props. So for everyone that bashed me the first week of this show, I have made sure that we have had some hockey. We'll have hockey bets. We've also got Dr. David Chao, former NFL team doctor, going to join the show to talk to us about the NFL draft. Maybe there are certain players that might fall because of injury. We've got some injuries throughout the NBA. Dame Lillard is back for the Milwaukee Bucks tonight. What should we expect from him today? Major League Baseball, there were also a few injuries like Spencer Strider going to the IL, Luis Arraez with the concussion. We'll see what Dr. David Chao has to say about some of those players coming back too. Can you ask Pete about first goal scorer prop? Yeah, so we'll make sure to just remind me when Pete comes on the show, Mark. Just rewrite it in the chat. Everyone write in the chat whatever you might want us to ask Pete. He'll be on from 5:10 p.m. Eastern time until 5:30-ish Eastern time. So make sure to tune in. We've got the newsletter go out this morning, and it was kind of split yesterday where I was right. The Miami Marlins, they cashed the fishy line with the 6-3 win over the Cincinnati Reds. My friend Mark Zinno came on the show. He also gave out the Marlins first five. Marlins against lefties. Make sure you stick with the trend. Nick small forward, Mikal Bridges, he went over his 14.5 points prop, going up 19 against the Pistons. That was a number yesterday that Mikal Bridges went over in every game of 14.5 points against the Pistons in the regular season. It just made sense that since he didn't go over it in game one, that he should have gone over it in game two, and he did. The Pistons defense has been a mess. I feel bad for you Knicks fans, though. I am very sorry that they lost that game last night. That's brutal. The Knicks point guard, Jalen Brunson, once again, he ends up going over his points prop, which was 28.5. He had 37 points. I know what I meant to put in the show. I couldn't think of what I wanted to put in the show today. Underdog Fantasy. I have their tweets on push alerts. I got a push alert yesterday that Jalen Brunson was returning back from the bench. Returning back from the locker room and was back in the game. And I'm thinking to myself, Jalen Brunson, what? And then he went to go get his cape. Hilarious. I just thought it was funny. Like, he went to go get his cape. That's why he was coming back into the game. The Knicks did not get it done. Where I was wrong yesterday. So Tyler McGill, one of my Royal Locks, he did not go over his 5.5. He did not go under his 5.5K prop. He very well went over it. 10 strikeouts for McGill. That was really unfortunate. The fishy line for the Milwaukee Brewers did not cash. The Giants ended up winning 5-2. The Clippers, their leading three-point shooter, Norman Powell, he still didn't get over his 2.5 3-pointers made prop. Like, dude, you are the leading three-point shooter on this team. You have led Powell, the Clippers, in three-point shooting. You have averaged 3.5 to 4 strikeouts, Jesus. 3.5 to 4 three-pointers a game when facing bottom 10 perimeter defenses all year. All of a sudden, it's the playoffs and you're choking on the three-point line or outside? Come on. Dude, we've got to be better. He had 2 3-pointers again. I'm pissed. You really should be attacking this terrible Nuggets perimeter defense more. Like, this is ridiculous already, Norman Powell. I'm really pissed off at you. So today we've got a big slate in Major League Baseball. I wish I kind of had more to say about yesterday. Honestly, there wasn't much for me to say. I know that Alex Ovechkin had a big goal yesterday in the NHL. So that's awesome. Go Caps. I like Ovechkin. I don't really have much else about yesterday. Yesterday, like NBA games, the playoffs were pretty good. Let's see. Yesterday's games, I know we talked. I mean, the biggest story of the day in the NBA is that Shaq almost like pooped his pants on air. Like, that's when you know it wasn't like overly exciting yesterday. Sorry, the NBA fans. But the Knicks ended up losing 100-94 to the Pistons, and the Clippers ended up winning 105-102. That is a great series, though. Those two teams were battling it out. I fell asleep in the second half of the game. But those two teams, when I watched with Lauren Jabara, who's awesome, by the way, when I watched Lauren Jabara interview Ivica Zubac in the middle of the game, he was gassed from just like a quarter of covering Nikola Jokic. Stats from the games. Let's see what else went on in the NBA, because that was a little more exciting than Major League Baseball. Kawhi was insane. We know that. 39 points last night. He was like 9. I think at one point he was like 9 of 10 his first shot. So he went well over his points prop. James Harden continues to not go over his points prop when he's in the playoffs. Shocker. Nikola Jokic, 26 points, 12 rebounds, 10 assists. I forget what Jokic's rebounds prop was. Aaron Gordon was part of propaganda yesterday, by the way. Yesterday in propaganda, Aaron Gordon's under points was one of the most bet on props of the day. Now I have to remember what his points prop was. Let me see if I could find it real quick from yesterday. NBA yesterday. Nope, now I can't find it. Of course, this is what happens to me. I am very interested, though, to find out NBA. Oh, here it is. Okay, yesterday. Nope, that was today. Oh, God, this is so annoying. Sorry, everyone. Okay, Aaron Gordon under 16.5 points yesterday was the fourth most bet on prop at BetMGM. That ended up cashing because he only had 14 points. His 3-point prop over was the fifth most bet on prop, but he went under that at 1.5. Another prop yesterday that was one of the most bet on, Nikola Jokic over 1.5 made threes at -145. He ended up with 4 threes yesterday, so the public cashed on that. Zubac over 11.5 rebounds. Zubac ended up with 12, so just gets over the mark. I almost gave that out yesterday, having regrets. The thing with Zubac is he's the only person that can defend Jokic, obviously. So with having to defend Jokic to keep yourselves in the game, the Clippers have no choice but to play Zubac that many minutes. And he's going to get the rebounds because he's going to be in that often. So Ivica Zubac, he ends up going over his 11.5 rebounds. Jokic over a half a block yesterday also. That was the third most bet on prop of the day. And he did not have any. So the book did not cash that one. So yeah, those were the propaganda props of yesterday in the NBA, the most bet on props. And I only did it for Clippers Nuggets yesterday. In the Knicks Pistons game, Jalen Duren under assists, Mikal Bridges under 3.5 assists, but we cashed his over points. Jalen Duren under 10.5 rebounds, Tim Hardaway Jr. under 2.5 3-pointers, and Cat over 1.5 3-pointers were your most bet on props at BetMGM. So yesterday in that 194 Pistons win, Jalen Duren had 13 rebounds. So he did not go under. So the public ended up losing there. Bridges had 0 assists. So the public on Bridges under assists cashed. Duren under assists. These are such random props for people to be betting. Duren had 2 assists. So he ends up going under his 2.5 assists. That's crazy. And then Cat over his 3-pointers. He went over 2. Cat was atrocious yesterday. He should be ashamed of himself for that second half. The fact that the Knicks lost was because Cat sucked. Like, let's be honest. Cat had 10 points in the entire game against the Pistons, against Jalen Duren and the Pistons. Thompson, Howard, like, come on, Cat. You're way better than that. That's why the team lost. So dumb. I don't understand how he ends up with 10 points and 6 rebounds. Like, something's wrong there. I'm really glad that we cashed Mikal Bridges, but still, like, to do nothing in the second half of that game is just an absolute embarrassment. Pete Jensen is here, NHL Fantasy. I haven't spoken to Pete in so long. I worked with him a ton when I was at Sports Grid for all my Till Bet to This Part followers. Pete Jensen joining the show. You've got to bear with me because sometimes this gets messed up. Thanks for coming on.
Sure thing. Great to see you. And yeah, it's the height of Stanley Cup playoff hockey right now with things just beginning over the weekend. Couple surprises so far, but not surprised at all to see the Dallas Stars and the Colorado Avalanche tied 1-1. Those have been 2 of the best teams in the league all year. two juggernauts, and I expect that series to go 7 games. So we're off to a good start on that one.
I know a lot of people in hockey betting like to look to overs early, then unders later, because defense just gets so much tighter when you get to the later games. Pete, who would be some players that early on you would tell prop bettors to potentially focus on?
Yeah, I think some of these series like Ottawa, Toronto, two teams that shoot the puck a lot, both have good goaltending, but I feel like the offenses are opening up so far. We saw 3 for 6 from Toronto on the power play in the first game of the series. That signals some undisciplined play, of course, from Ottawa, with many of their top players making their Stanley Cup playoff debuts, like Brady Tkachuk, Jake Sanderson. I would look for those two guys specifically to make an impact in game 2. And one thing, like a general strategy right now, like don't get too high with the highs or low with the lows. Maybe an exception to that is the New Jersey Devils, because they're banged up. They don't have Jack Hughes. Luke Hughes is now injured too. That's, I'm steering clear of the Devils right now. But all the other teams, whether it's Minnesota, Ottawa, they dropped the first game of the series. Look for them to make adjustments as it goes to game 2, and then target some of their top players in the props market when everybody else is getting super heavy on teams like Vegas and Toronto, and the bias towards those teams that you see in so much casual fans out there.
So Mark keeps asking about these first goal scorer props. Who would you say, and I guess he wants it in both games, actually. He wants Leafs, Sens, and Toronto, Ottawa. But just overall, before we get into game by game, how would you handicap that first goal scorer market?
Those are tough. I mean, you can always get big numbers in that market. I think that some of the players that are faster players, you can certainly try to target in that market. One guy that comes to mind, like if you're looking at game 2, Anthony Beauvillier for the Washington Capitals, he was playing up on the top line with Dylan Strome and Alex Ovechkin. If you could say, oh, this guy had a breakout game in game 1, maybe he's a faster player. He might be on the ice with those two top dogs for Washington's offense. And maybe his first shift of the game, maybe he finds some breathing room and knocks one in. That's like, could be your strategy there. In general, I like to try to lean toward the goal scorers from the regular season who have high shot volumes. 2 guys tonight in the Toronto-Ottawa game that we like at nhl.com/fantasy. Drake Batherson, secondary scoring stud for the Ottawa Senators. Again, the team has bounce back appeal. And then Matthew Nyes, who plays a lot with Austin Matthews, was right around 30 goals in the regular season. He is one of those guys like Tom Wilson, Brady Tkachuk, Matthew Nyes that brings the goal scoring pop, the shot volume, and also the physicality that you love to see these guys rise to the occasion when these games are putting everything on the line during the playoffs and stuff like that.
You said you were staying away from the New Jersey Devils because of all the injuries. The Hurricanes are minus 280. Their total's at 5.5. Clearly, someone's got to score. Clearly, the Hurricanes are the heavy favorites to win this series. Who in Carolina are you zoned in on?
So in Carolina, they have 2 nice rookies this year. Logan Stankoven, nice performance from him. He struggled in terms of cashing in on mid-range shots on goal all season long, whether he was with the Dallas Stars or the Carolina Hurricanes. And of course, bounces back in game 1 with 2 goals, 1 on the power play, 1 from mid-range. So you really like to see that for a young player that many of us, including myself, were really high on in the preseason. Also, Jackson Blake is among the rookie leaders in even strength goals, shots on goal, and goals outright in his rookie class. And those are 2 guys that are joining the mix for Carolina, a team that always outshoots its opponents this time of year, but sometimes comes 1 or 2 goals shy of breaking through and winning the whole thing. Maybe those young guys and the young blood on this roster turn the tide for Carolina, because they have a great path, I think, to the Eastern Conference Final if they can get a little bit more goal scoring and open up the offense.
A couple of teams that are going head to head that know how to get over that hump. Florida Panthers, Tampa Bay Lightning. This is the matchup everyone was looking forward to. Who do you like in this matchup?
I mean, this first one is going to be tough. Even as of right now, we don't know for sure if Matthew Tkachuk is going to be in the lineup. Remember, he was one of the heroes for the U.S. in the Four Nations tournament, and then he hasn't played since because of injury. So if he's out there, I would expect him to make an impact at some point in this series. We don't know for sure, so keep an eye on that up to puck drop. But that could even the playing field a little bit with the potent Tampa Bay Lightning offense, and of course, the Florida Panthers acquired Brad Marchand as well before the trade deadline. He has not played a game. They used to be nemesis, right? Like when the Bruins would play the Panthers in the playoffs. Now they could be on the same line. So I would look, if Tkachuk is in, look at Tkachuk, or maybe even by association, Brad Marchand. Tampa Bay, a lot of people siding with them right now, but this series is a toss-up just as much as the Colorado-Dallas one is.
Yeah, listen, you know me. I need all your help when it comes to hockey. I know one thing, Florida versus Tampa is an insane matchup. So that's
Totally.
one that I know people definitely want to look at. Last night, we saw Alex Ovechkin in the Caps pull out the win. Ovechkin continues to be everything the NHL needs him to be. He's the big name, goes for the record, hits the goal record this year, gets the win last night for his Caps. How do you bet Ovechkin when he's such a public player?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. You're looking back and you see a crazy stat, right? Let's be honest. When you hear that Alex Ovechkin had never prior to last night scored an overtime playoff goal in his career. But the guy, if you look at his body of work, hasn't gotten past the second round much in his career. Really, the only year he did it was when they won the Cup in 2018 against the Golden Knights. So, I think that he has a chance here. I was mentioning the path for Carolina. Washington's been a much better and consistent team. So I feel like you could look at power play point props for Ovechkin and get a good number there. The shot props are, bloated because he's just so good in that category. But he's pounding out the shots right now. He's in his office on the left side. He's also venturing into the high danger zone like he did last night for the game-winning goal. That was pretty cool to see. But overall, Ovechkin averaging about a half a goal per game in his Stanley Cup playoff career, which is pretty darn good, even though he had never scored an OT winner before last night. So, yeah, look at Ovi in the anytime goal market, the shot prop market, and then certainly the power play point market, because I think there's a lot of speed on Montreal, but there's a lot of inexperience. So maybe over the course of the series, they make some mistakes and Ovechkin makes them pay.
That is crazy. I had no idea he never scored. Wow, that's nuts. Okay, Alex Ovechkin, now you know the markets to bet to try to take advantage of. Do you believe, Pete, in this, Canada can never win or be anything in the Stanley Cup playoffs, whole jinx?
No, I mean, I think that Toronto is, with their coaching and their goalie tandem, could put a better foot forward than it has to this point in the Matthews, Marner, Nylander era, because they're just more well-rounded, and they have coach Craig Berube, who, has won the Stanley Cup before with the St. Louis Blues. So don't sleep on that team. I know nobody is. If anything, they're probably the most bet team out there because of everybody up north supporting them. But
everyone just wants to see it.
Yeah, no, for sure. And the Winnipeg Jets have a great chance too. I mean, nice job by them taking care of business so far. I know the St. Louis Blues are without Dylan Holloway, but they're also missing guys too. Winnipeg is missing Gabriel Velarde. He could return in Game 3. That's huge news for them if they want to try to make this a quick series. Also, Nikolai Ehlers, one of their best secondary scorers, is out of the lineup the first two games, but they're still up 2-0. That's because they have the best goalie in the land in Hellebuck. And I feel like the Jets, even though they're in that tough Central Division, maybe Colorado and Dallas beat up on each other, and then Winnipeg could pounce on whichever one sneaks by in Game 6 or 7 and advance to the conference final for the first time in a number of years.
When it comes to the Conn Smythe, it's the best way in my mind to get some good value because, of course, the teams that are favored to win right now, I mean, you're looking at 5 teams that are shorter than 10-1 to win the Stanley Cup to win the Stanley Cup. So when it comes to the Conn Smythe, then you just assume, okay, at this point, I'm going to pick a player who's going to be in there and win it all. Who would you put your money on?
I mean, I think that Nikita Kucherov is a guy that is being underestimated in this market. It's interesting. I've talked about it on a couple of shows today because he is barely in the top 10 in the odds board on most books for the Conn Smythe, but he has the most points in the NHL each of the past 2 regular seasons. He has the most playoff points in the NHL since 2015-16. His team, the Tampa Bay Lightning, won the Cup in 2020 and 2021. And it's one of those situations where his teammate in each of those seasons, first Vasilevsky and then Hedman, won the Conn Smythe in those years. So if they get back there, if they can fend off the Florida Panthers, the in-state rival, and then they can make another deep run, which we all know they're capable of. They could beat the Leafs. They could beat whoever they play in the conference final. And then if the West teams beat up on each other, I mean, they're not going to want to run into the Lightning. So maybe if they get that far, Kucherov has done more than enough the past few years and for his career at large, where if he's a major player in the Cup final, he would well deserve the Conn Smythe Trophy. He hasn't won the Hart Trophy the past 2 years, even though he was leading the league in scoring. And maybe he could, kind of one up everybody and prove his worth over the course of this postseason.
I know people who are here right now, they probably are looking for bets, props. They love player props, etc. I know that fantasy is also a big part of what you do. What do you do to get involved on the fantasy side during the playoffs?
Yeah, I think that, a lot of it translates to the props market right now. There are people doing fantasy pools and playing various games out there. We have, games on NHL.com that people can dabble in, but the props market right now, we cover all year long the shots on goal volumes for different players.
Shots on
even
goal.
Like tonight we were looking at it, like whether it's Pavel Dorofeyev or Tomas Hertl for the Golden Knights. They have a nice matchup against the Minnesota Wild at home. Tomas Hertl has been hitting 3+ shots on goal for quite a while now, and you can still get like a plus number on that. So it's something that where certain guys, the more under the radar, the better, because the casual fans are drawn towards Austin Matthews and drawn toward Alex Ovechkin and drawn toward McDavid and Draisaitl.
The value's gone from those players. That's why you've got to listen to someone like you.
Well, we try to, pinpoint those players. You could actually find our picks on NHL.com/fantasy. Myself, Chris Meany, Troy Perlowitz. We look at the analytics. We look at the edge stats. You could find NHL.com/edge you can click around there and find some good nuggets as well. And some hidden gems in terms of the advanced stats.
Josh Gold wants to know, who does Pete have for the Cup final and winner?
Yeah, so I have Colorado over Florida, but I know I know both series could go either way. Maybe it'll be Dallas over Tampa because both of those series are toss-ups. I will say the Avalanche, it's amazing what they've built since the beginning of the season, where they were just a 3-headed monster, McKinnon, Makar, and Rantanen, and then they had barely any depth. Everybody was injured on that team. They got a new goalie tandem. Blackwood and Wedgwood have been awesome. They got Brock Nelson, Charlie Coyle. They got Lehkonen back from injury. Valeri Nichushkin is a beast. As long as he's in the lineup, I love their chances of winning the Stanley Cup. And he was a huge part of it in 2022 when they did get over the hump. He had probably the best Cup final of any player on that team.
Okay, there you go, Josh. Go bet your futures now, because when Pete says it, I bet it. What are your best bets for tonight, Pete?
Well, we were talking about Drake Batherson. We were talking about Tomas Hertl, Matthew Nyes. Those are a couple of my favorites for goal, anytime goal, shots on goal, 3+. Logan Stankoven, I mentioned him against the Devils without Luke Hughes, Jack Hughes. It's a favorable matchup, to say the least. You're always going to see surprises in hockey, especially with a team like the Hurricanes. Like I said, sometimes they could outshoot a team 40-20 and still lose. So that's why I'm not getting too heavy on the Carolina Hurricanes. But actually, one play, if you're looking for the Devils, Dougie Hamilton is back from injury. And now that Luke Hughes is injured, maybe it's just one of those games where Dougie Hamilton has like 8 shots on goal, whether they win or lose. So, if you could knock up the ladder on the shots on goal and go with Dougie Hamilton for 4+ shots or 5+ shots, that's probably relatively safe considering the offense is going to be revolving around Dougie tonight.
Former Carolina Hurricane too, so
Yes.
revenge spot.
For sure. Yeah, you got to look at the revenge. There's a bunch of revenge angles in this series. We'll see if Marc-Andre Fleury gets into the net for Minnesota at some point in the game or in the series against Vegas. But there's Carter Verhaeghe. Verhaeghe, one of our guys at NHL.com was actually looking at him tonight because he's quietly the franchise leader for the Florida Panthers in playoff goals, even strength points, and game-winning goals. This guy's been clutch. Like, you're looking at like last goal scorer or live line if the game goes to overtime. I would expect in the Dallas, that's another angle you could play, is the 3-way money line for the game to get to overtime. I feel like Florida, Tampa, and Dallas, Colorado, for all the reasons I've mentioned so far, there's going to be a number of overtime games in both of those series. So jump on it now or jump on it in the middle of the game if one team's trailing or something like that.
It's the only sport that I feel I hear people bet overtime regularly, right? Like, I feel like you don't really hear it much in other sports.
No, it's true. One of my favorite picks from the Four Nations, that epic game between U.S. and Canada, was that the game would go to overtime, and it did. McDavid ended up finishing it off. I know some of the storylines carry over from that tournament. It's kind of funny too, right? You see Connor Hellebuck and the Jets facing Jordan Binnington in the first round with their NHL teams, the Jets and the Blues, after they played each other as the goaltenders in U.S. versus Canada. I mentioned Brady Tkachuk. He had 5 shots on goal in his first game. I like Ottawa's chances of pulling the upset tonight on the road in Toronto, and Brady Tkachuk to hit the goal and the shot props. His first game back from injury was just a few days ago. So he got his feet wet. Now he's going to be coming out for, some respect up in Toronto in that Battle of Ontario.
I love any kind of good revenge spot. Sign me up. Before I let you go, it's hard in these series because when you have hockey and basketball, these leagues only really play each other on one-offs during the regular season. How does your handicap change knowing that these are series now?
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be responses from some of these teams. That's why I was saying don't get too low with the lows for Ottawa or Minnesota. Minnesota, nobody's talking about them, but they have Kirill Kaprizov back. He's one of the top 10 players, I think everyone would agree, who really knows the sport in deep, like that. Kaprizov's, he could pop off at any moment. And, Vegas is a great home team, but Minnesota has some horses on its blue line. And, the rookie Zeev Buium came over, made his NHL debut. Could you believe that in the first game of the series?
No.
He was a little overmatched at times, but I would expect a player of that caliber to make some adjustments. And all of a sudden, Minnesota evens things up, and we're talking about a different series. So look at those game 2 underdogs with a chance to bounce back after what they learned in game 1.
That's going to happen throughout these Stanley Cup playoffs. You never know who's going to win. Pete Jensen from NHL Fantasy, NHL.com. Let everyone know what you're up to these Stanley Cup playoffs so people can find you there.
Sure. We're covering the edge stats leaders, the advanced stats, NHL.com/edge. We're updating our fantasy playoff pool rankings. We're dropping episodes of NHL Fantasy on Ice. You could still listen to that preview episode. It's good food for thought, even though we played a couple games. Of course, Tampa, Florida has not played a game yet, so you could still listen to it for that. And we try to hit on the props and stuff like that on that daily story on NHL.com/fantasy.
Pete Jensen, thank you so much for coming on. I know we're going to have you again very soon because I need all the help I could get for helping everybody watching on the Stanley Cup playoffs. Good luck tonight and speak to you soon.
Thanks so much. Good to see you, and enjoy the hockey tonight. Starts at 6 p.m. and then there's an 11 p.m. game for the Night Owls out there. So that's pretty
because
crazy.
It's in Vegas.
Yeah.
Vegas doesn't sleep. Of course, the 11 o'clock game is in Vegas. Gosh, I'm going to bed, but you stay up and watch. Pete, thank you so much.
Looking forward to it. Thanks, Ariel.
Okay, as I figure out StreamYard, and I want to make sure that before Pete leaves, and then I'll bring Dr. Chao up who's waiting, because every time I do this, I end up bringing the former guest back onto the show, and then it's awkward because they're trying to figure out their like setup. Okay, anyway, so the next guest, former team doctor in the NFL. He's also very experienced in every sport because he covers pretty much every single sport. And he's a Padres fan, and there was a big injury to the Padres this week, kind of. I feel like it was the NFL, basically. But now I'm going to bring in our next guest. Great friend of mine, known him for a long time, Dr. David Chao. Thank you so much for coming. Nope, see, I messed it up. Thank you for coming on. I do this every time I switch guests.
That's okay. I can't do anything by myself. So I've got someone who does it. So thank you.
Trying
Thanks
to
for
run the
having me.
show. Yeah, of course. I'm really excited because we've got the NFL draft coming up in a couple of days. MLB, a bunch of injuries already happened. Shocker. Then I'm like, okay, I booked Dr. Chao. All's good. Dame Lillard is coming back tonight for the Milwaukee Bucks, which is absolutely insane. So let's start there because I haven't even touched on it yet. What can we expect from Dame Lillard tonight?
A little bit of an unusual situation, but it's good news. I mean, it's only been about a month that he's been out. And usually if you get a blood clot and all this stuff, it's minimum 6 weeks, 3 months, and sometimes longer. And so he is back a little bit sooner. It all depends on what the cause of the blood clot was and whether he needs to be anticoagulated and the safety. I'm sure they've done that. But we have his six score, sports injury central score at 80. So from a prop queen perspective, 80%, because, it's going to be his stamina and wind and rust, right, for not playing in a month. There's no physical reason he can't play and do well, but is he really going to log 36 minutes in his first game back, right? I don't know his numbers and splits normally, but you have to say it's got to be a little bit tempered expectations, but at least he is back.
Yeah, if I was him, but I'm a hypochondriac, so that's a little different. I would be nervous to step on my calf, but hey, or knee, wherever it was, the blood clot. I would be nervous, but I'm sure he's not because I'm just a crazy person. So I think it just helps, if anything, for Giannis, who has great numbers in this matchup with the Pacers. Sean Michael already saying, I like this guy. Bring him on once a week. Good info. Of course, it's good info. He's a doctor. He's smart.
At least somebody likes me.
Hey, I like you. I've talked to you for like 5 years at this point, Dr. Chao. Yeah. And we hung out for the first time in real life at the Super Bowl last year.
Yeah, well, actually, we actually hung out. You're forgetting now. I'm insulted. One time in New York, we watched a Sunday night football game.
Yes, I forgot about that. That was a long time
ago. I'm pretty forgettable.
See, that's my bad. I think we went to the Ainsworth, right?
I think so. And you were coming back from a Ravens game earlier or something, or a Giants game or something. And you probably don't remember me. You just remember the other guy that was at dinner,
No, that's not true. You were with your friend. See, I remember, but I don't remember his name.
Oh, you remember his name?
I was in a bad what?
You don't remember his name either? It makes me feel a little bit better.
No, I don't remember his name.
Former NFL QB, Jay Fiedler, Jets, Dolphins.
I forgot. Honestly, I just remember seeing you, and I'm
well,
pretty sure the Ravens.
Better.
I remember the Ravens lost that day. It was the last thing I blocked that day out. They lost to the Giants. I blocked that day completely out, Dr. Chao. It didn't exist. No offense.
I don't feel so bad. You didn't remember Jay Fiedler, so I wouldn't expect you to remember me then.
No, it's okay. You're very memorable, and I haven't spoken to Jay ever since. So here we are. NFL draft is this week, though. It starts on Thursday. Obviously, a lot of people love to bet it. The betting boards they're pretty much off the board after tomorrow. Who is someone you're most concerned about on the board this week?
Well, of course, we deal in insider knowledge, not insider information. I'm not calling other doctors to get this, that, the other. But the concerns really depends. Look, everyone on the board is draftable, okay? It's just at what value. I remember a couple years ago, we faded and said, look, we weren't saying Tyree Wilson was going to be terrible. We're saying if Tyree Wilson and Will Anderson are graded the same, the Texans or the first defensive player off the board has to be Will Anderson, not Tyree Wilson, because of his foot issue. That so far has panned out. Wilson with the Raiders hasn't done a lot. Will Anderson has done a lot. Abdul Carter is a big name at the top. He's got perhaps a stress injury on his foot. He is clearly draftable, but there is some risk that he may miss some time in the first year. Will Johnson with the turf toe, DB, a safety with a turf toe who hasn't run, certainly has some concern. And the Walker kid from Kentucky, Deion Walker, DB, a stress fracture in your low back. That's almost more concerning than in your foot. I mean, he's risen up the draft boards. They've said, look, he had an injury last year, and therefore this is why it's not good. But this injury may not just go away. So it requires a lot on the physical exam. Siobhan Revelle Jr., the East Carolina DB, coming off an ACL. He'll be fine, just like when we drafted Antonio Cromartie coming off his ACL. He was fine, but what I told my team in the draft room, whatever you get the first year is all gravy, but he's going to be fine. And obviously, Cromartie had a good career. Revelle should be able to as well. John Simmons, left tackle, Ohio State, patella tendon rupture. They say he's good to go, but that's a long recovery injury. Look for maybe a rotational player early on and maybe starting second half of the rookie season. But once again, if you're drafting across 4 or 5 years or more, no real worries in terms of his recovery. And I always like to say good news. There seemed to be a lot of talk about Tyler Show, the quarterback. He's injury prone, 3 straight season-ending injuries. He made it through last year at Louisville. Maybe it's the protection at his previous school. His shoulder injury is his non-throwing shoulder, so no worries. He broke his collarbone and he broke his ankle. They're not related other than playing the collision sport of football. So I probably medically don't have any significant worry on him, even though there's been some concern about him and his health.
Dr. Chao, how invested and involved, I guess, as a team doctor at the NFL were you when it came to draft day?
Well, okay, I'll tell my favorite story. Well, obviously, combines are huge, right? Combines and meeting with the GM and so forth. So my favorite story actually did involve Antonio Cromartie. I'm in the draft room, and the Chargers, the draft room, look, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinators were not in there. It was the head coach, GM, assistant GM, ownership, the head scout. I mean, very limited. There was a 10/12 person, what I call adult table at Thanksgiving. And the head athletic trainer and I were in the corner on a little round table in the corner at what we call the kids table. We didn't dare walk up on the draft board and see what they had, kind of thing. We just sat and spoke when we were spoken to.
Speak when you're spoken to.
Oh, and let me tell you, the GM, God bless his soul, at the time, came over and he asked about Cromartie. And Cromartie wasn't even on our list. We were drafting late teens, and he was supposed to be a top 10. And he wasn't even on our list to have a close look at. So back in the day, we weren't even computers. We were looking on paper. And I gave him the lowdown that he's draftable. He's not ready today, but he will be ready, gave him the lowdown. And then 2 picks later, he's still on the board. He comes back again and asks me again. And another pick before, he asked me again. And I'm looking at our head athletic trainer when AJ Smith, the GM, walks away. And I said, look, does AJ realize unless there's reappearing ink on this piece of paper, I told him everything I remember the first time. It was just written down on a piece of paper, right? We got the grade. And we picked him. He's also obviously had a good career. And our first round pick that year was supposed to be Marcus McNeil, who had back issues. And he slipped, and we got him in the second round. And so the funniest story, once again, are you okay? Are you okay with him? Like, yeah, we're okay with him. They both were great contributors for the Chargers. But after we drafted Marcus McNeil, AJ Smith was high-fiving everybody because they got 2 first-round draft picks. That's potentially who we were targeting in the first round. They got Cromartie extra and Marcus McNeil with the first 2. And he comes sauntering over to the kids' table, speaks to us, and says, well, men, it's all on you now. And so I answered.
Get them right.
I had a great relationship with AJ Smith, and I said back to AJ, I said, Coach, everyone's called Coach. I said, Coach, I understand if either one of these two don't work out, I'm fired. But if they both do I get a raise? And he just chuckled and walked away.
It's called do your job, Dr. Chao.
I know. At the kids' table. But, that there are many drafts where I was never spoken to, so I didn't say anything.
Isn't that interesting? Because there's definitely players in every draft when it comes to your team that there are players on the board with injury concerns. So I find it really fascinating that you weren't spoken to sometimes.
Oh, no, that's because all the prep work was done. We've already
so they already spoke to it was more than
there's meetings
in
ahead
the
of
war
time.
room you were
I'm just
meeting
saying
with.
On draft day itself, like what else is new? It's all hands on deck. But there were many years no one said anything to me.
How is the prep for you then leading up to draft day?
Well, yeah, the combines are very busy, and either the head team physician and or the head athletic trainer are in some of the draft meetings, especially when they go over medical, whether this guy's a red dot where they're deciding really not worth the risk, or yellow dot or green dot. And there's a medical grade like a 40 time that's on their little magnet. Now it's all computerized, but before then it was the magnet boards and whatever. So we're intimately involved in the medical rating, but not in the picking, right? And all the information's been given, just like every scout's given their information to the GM and all the meetings. It's just on, quote, draft day, game day, you weren't always spoken to, and you were when spoken to in the room in hushed tones and the whole deal.
Who's somebody in this draft this year that you're high on that others may be low on?
Well, I mean, Tyler Show is the one. I think his injury stuff is fine as a quarterback. I will be the first to admit, though, from a bandwidth perspective, I watch basically every NFL game, and I will admit I'm a little bit of a cherry picker at most on college. So I'm not the best person to ask. I mean, from a little bit what I saw, this Tyler Warren tight end from Penn State, he may indeed be pretty special as Brock Bowers last year that the Raiders drafted out of Georgia. So that's maybe someone to keep an eye on. But, I'm not necessarily.
Hey, I'm just here to ask for advice about injuries that maybe people could be low on, and you could get a good buy, low value. All that stuff is what we're looking for on those NFL draft boards. Someone at the NFL level. And Sean Michael's asking, how do you think the long-term recovery for Aiden Hutchinson injury is going to look like? Not 30, 35. I think I don't know what year he meant, but I guess Aiden Hutchinson. What do you think?
Look, I was on record before. Absolutely ridiculous that Aiden Hutchinson would play in the Super Bowl if the Lions got there. Not going to happen. As pessimistic as I was on that, and even though I remember when he started running in water and everyone's like, oh, maybe he's going to make it. I'm like, no, he's not. I said, and my line then was, there's video of him. He's running, but he's running in water, not walking on water. I mean, it's just not going to happen, even if they get there. The timeline's too quick. But as pessimistic as I was on that, I'm very optimistic that he's 100% recovered for this upcoming football season with no residual, very reliable recovery, no issues for Aiden Hutchinson.
Love to hear it for those Detroit Lions who choked again in the playoffs. Aaron Rodgers, the biggest offseason storyline, go figure. Rodgers not with the team yet, Dr. Chao. How much of Aaron Rodgers' failures, I guess, at the quarterback position this past year were because of his age and health or because of the team he was on?
Well, Father Time is undefeated, so age certainly has a factor. And as I watched, I don't think it had anything to do with his Achilles per se, but it did have to do with the fact that he's an older quarterback. And I remember Aaron Rodgers when he first burst onto the scene back in his heyday with Green Bay. You could argue if you name the top 3 pocket quarterbacks in the league, he was on the list. And if you named back in the day the top 3 mobile quarterbacks in the league when he won his Super Bowl, he was on the list. And he was the only guy that was a mobile and pocket guy. What I saw out of Aaron Rodgers is that he's still got the mental capacity. His arm strength isn't bad, but his throwing on the run and mobility just isn't there anymore. So there's part of his game that isn't there. And that has to do perhaps with scheme and the team around him, but also with age, right? I mean, that part of your game goes away first. And I think that's what the difference is there. I think he still can be effective, but the mobility part of his game, which he used to be among the best, throwing on the run and running when necessary, I don't think was there anymore.
I have a feeling that if the match isn't correct in Pittsburgh, which it doesn't seem that those two get along, that Aaron Rodgers is waiting for someone to go down to injury and get desperate for him.
Look, I don't see how he goes to Pittsburgh if he doesn't sign before the draft, right? Like Shedeur Sanders, I said on the podcast, I don't see Shedeur Sanders going to the Saints. The Giants maybe as a Hail Mary, but the Steelers are the likely destination. If you're Aaron Rodgers and you're the Steelers, Aaron Rodgers maybe rightfully complained when he was in Green Bay when the team drafted Jordan Love. He said, wait a minute, why are you using a first-round pick on Jordan Love? I'm here. Use it on a wide receiver. Use it on someone who can help me win this year. The Steelers have you know them very well in the division, an aging team, especially on defense. Cam Hayward, TJ Watt, Minka, etc. Their window isn't forever. It behooves Aaron Rodgers, if he were going to Pittsburgh, to say, I'm coming, draft someone in the first round that can help us this year. Don't go draft a quarterback for the future kind of thing. But he'd have to sign ahead of time. You can't go into the draft not signed. Can you blame the Steelers if they drafted Shedeur Sanders now? Can Aaron Rodgers be upset about that? Look, you're not with us. So if he's not signed before the draft, and it doesn't look like he is, I don't think he's going to go there, right? The team is going to move on. And so you're right. He may be waiting for an injury somewhere else to plug and play. But I don't see how you could, if you go back to even the Brett Favre days, it was tell us before the draft. Are you playing or are you not? We need to know how to plan. And Aaron Rodgers, if he were joining the Steelers, would want them to know, right? Pick somebody that can help us now because we're trying to win now. So at this point, I don't see it.
Yeah, I don't see it either. I want to switch to Major League Baseball before I let you go. Spencer Strider back on the IL after season-ending surgery last year. How concerning is this for the Braves?
Well, look, not concerning at all when you say it's the hamstring and it's not the elbow or the shoulder, but very concerning because it's all a kinetic chain. I know he's a workout monster, huge thighs, the whole thing, but you pitch with your legs, right? And so if your mechanics aren't completely right on the elbow, does that beget the hamstring and workout? And look, you're the prop queen, but at Sports Injury Central, we already faded Strider and his team.
I took his under 6.5 strikeouts on his debut. It was a great bet.
So we faded him on his debut too. He's back sooner than you could expect. Don't buy into the internal braces like a miracle thing. He's back sooner. Good for him. But injuries beget injuries. And look, pitchers and their mechanics, they're fine-tuned Indy or Formula One cars. One little thing off, and it's a big deal.
Well, you start to use other parts of your body that you shouldn't be using when you're worried about injury.
Yes, that's exactly right. So hats off to him. He's trying to get back early for his team, but boy, this seems a little bit rushed. And we hope he can avoid injury or re-injury the rest of the season.
Last one, because I know you're a Padres fan. Luis Arraez, it looked like he was a football player running into the first baseman a few days ago. He got stretchered off the field, which is crazy. You never really see anyone get stretchered off the field in a baseball game. How much of that was precaution? How much of that was it was really that bad?
Well, look, I'm not trying to belittle concussions. He's out 7 days with a concussion, but in real time, we posted videos saying, don't see a long-term injury here, likely concussion. You do it in football nowadays too.
Well, it's like normal in football to watch someone get stretchered off.
Right.
Like, it's precautionary.
You get stretchered off in the collar and the ambulance on the field. You just don't see it in baseball. It's the same type of football type collision. That's what it looked like. But, it certainly took all the air out of the building. He was the second batter up in the game, and it was horrific. And it's something that baseball players don't typically see. Football players, unfortunately, see it more often than you like. And thankfully, knock on wood, usually is a good ending, right? Like they're released from the hospital and they're fine. But you got to make sure in case that 0.5% chance something is worse. That's all they were doing here, but it does take the air out of the team. Luis Arraez, at least 7 days. Look, when Jackson Merrill went out, I was like, I have to be watching the game. The back pick, first to third run, grabbing his hamstring. And I told my son, who's 12, who loves the Padres, watching, said, and Jackson Merrill is currently his favorite player ahead of Tatis.
Sure.
Like he hurt his hamstring. And then he told me, he goes, Dad, you were wrong. They said the next game was a rest day for him. And I said, Davis, don't take the cheese, okay? I'm not saying the Padres didn't know about it, just the way that they talked about it. But I said, wait a minute. Are you really telling me 10 games into the season, the 20-year-old young guy needs a rest day? When 3 days earlier before the Cubs series, they had a travel rest day on Thursday. And now this next Monday, 10 games in the season, he needs a rest day? Oh, come on now. And of course,
your son needs to learn about teams. Yeah, your son needs to learn about coach and team speak, what my brother needs to learn about TikTok. It's usually not accurate.
Yeah, and what I say is, look, what we do at Sports Injury Central, SICscore.com, is we're really the only place that concentrates on injury analysis versus injury reporting. Everyone else says, well, they said Jackson Merrill's fine, right? Kind of thing. Or they said da-da-da-da-da-da-da. We're looking at game film and what it is kind of thing. And I'll throw another curveball out at you. It's interesting, the Kirk Cousins controversy that's coming out. We buy that Kirk Cousins got injured in that last play of the first half, I think the 10th or 11th game of the season. Before he was hurt, I think he was 16 touchdowns, 1 interception. After he was hurt, he was 1 touchdown and 8 interceptions and then got benched. And we see the play at the end of the half that he gets hit in his shoulder and elbow at the same time. And his numbers weren't the same after that. So it's going to be interesting what Atlanta does. Michael Penix, the starter, will they ship Kirk Cousins out somewhere else? That's someone else waiting in the wings. We did not notice the injury when it happened. He got put on the injury report. But when at the Super Bowl, a report came out that he was injured, we were jaded too. Like, we don't buy it. We went back and looked at film and we go, there it is. There's his throwing motion change. There's the stats. We actually buy into that Kirk Cousins was injured. And then I think week 10 game and benched 4 games later. His second half was atrocious that day too.
Absolutely. And that's why everyone should follow along at SICscore.com. It's SICscore.com. He's David Chao at Pro Football Doc on X. Follow along. Make sure for football season you subscribe because he sends emails and it up to date everything that you need to know going into a Sunday. Dr. Chao, thank you so much for coming on. We'll have you on again soon.
Thank you.
Of course. Okay, we're going to storm through all of these plays for today. And if I don't get to some things, subscribe to the newsletter at thepropqueen.com. I've got everything on there in case I go a little too quickly. First, let's look at batters to watch. These are the players to look at overs for tonight. Yordan Alvarez hitting .421 with a double, 5 home runs against Chris Bassett in Toronto. Fernando Tatis Jr., 7 for 10 with 4 doubles and 2 homers against Jack Flaherty. Willy Adames, he's hitting .353 with 2 doubles and a homer against Jose Quintana. Willy Adames and I were just at a restaurant together, by the way. Lee Encontro. Batters to watch unders. Alex Bregman against Bryce Miller. He is an under today, or don't bet him. He has 1 hit in 15 at-bats against Miller. Pete Alonso has 4 hits and 20 at-bats, but he's got a homer. Lots of strikeouts, though, against Sanchez. Manny Machado also struggling against Jack Flaherty. And George Springer is yet to get a hit in 6 at-bats against Houston starter Ronel Blanco. In the NBA tonight, now I'm thinking I did this wrong. I read their email wrong and I did propaganda wrong. So I guess the only propaganda we're going to have today is for the Lakers and T-Wolves game. So, propaganda. It's my bad that I didn't realize BetMGM's emails have shifted, where it used to be these are the top 5 most bet on props. Now they're giving us the top 5 most bet on props per game. And this is why I was bad at standardized testing. My ELA score was always very average at like a 3 out of 5. It was not good. I'm not good at reading. Whatever. Lakers, T-Wolves. top 5 most bet on props. Luka Doncic over 30.5 points. What a surprise. Anthony Edwards over 25.5 points. What a surprise. Anthony Edwards over assists. Anthony Edwards over rebounds plus assists. Gosh, everyone loves him because of all his off the court controversy, I guess. LeBron James over 6.5 assists. No, I don't mind that one because his assists have gone up more with Luka in there. So I don't mind you going to LeBron over assists tonight against the T-Wolves. Do have some NBA plays. Let me see. What else do I have? K-props to watch, fishy lines in baseball. While we're on the NBA, I'll mention a few things. So Jessica Brand, who always is writing in the chat and is always super helpful with research, she gave me some really good info today. And I always tell you guys that Hakeem Prophet has yelled at me because I always bet numbers in the NBA and it works in the regular season and it does not work in the NBA playoffs. I'm just annoyed about it. That's all. I'm really just annoyed that it doesn't work because I love the NBA regular season where I do very well with props. My method does not work at all in the playoffs. Jessica found a great quote. You could look to Jaden McDaniels over 11.5 points tonight. He had a big game against the Lakers in game 1, putting up 25 points with 9 rebounds. Now, after the game, McDaniels said, quote, I just noticed at certain times when they had no rim protection in the game when Jackson Hayes wasn't on the court. If Hayes isn't on the court, I'm basically the tallest person out there. So I don't think no one could really rim protect me because Jackson Hayes wasn't on the court. If you want to look to over on McDaniels' points because he has spotted this mismatch, go right ahead. That would be something I'd play. I also will remind you, and I know Dame Lillard is, he is on the Lakers first quarter. I'm going to talk to him. We're done with betting Lakers, Hakeem. Okay, Giannis Antetokounmpo, his points prop is 32.5. I know that sounds high. I don't like betting high numbers. I just have to remind you that Giannis is averaging just over 35 points, just under 13 rebounds, and just under 7 assists per game in the last 5 years against the Indiana Pacers. Just remember those numbers. Dame Lillard's back tonight. Is he going to be 100%, playing 100% minutes? I think he should just be a decoy for Giannis. But anyway, those are Giannis's numbers. Back to Major League Baseball because I've got a very, very, very fishy line. Fishy line. Whew, baby. Okay, Mariners. This line moved 10 cents in favor of the Mariners, despite the public loving the Red Sox, who are at home. Not a surprise. What's surprising is that the public never really seems to look at pitchers because this pitcher, Brian Bayo, is making his season debut. Bayo had inflammation in his throwing shoulder, so he was sidelined at spring training. I don't like to bet a pitcher who's sidelined and coming back. Nonetheless, Bayo pitched in 4 different games in minor league ball. 2 in AA, 2 in AAA. Bayo had a 7.07 ERA in the minors. The Mariners have won 8 of their last 10. They're averaging just over 6 runs a game in this 10-game span. Bryce Miller is a good pitcher for the M's. He's pitched well in his last 2 starts. He's allowed 1 run in 10 innings in those 2 starts. The Mariners have the bullpen advantage. They're a top 10 bullpen. The Red Sox, they're ranked 21st. The Mariners are ranked 7th in bullpen ERA. So I like the Mariners tonight over the Red Sox. We've only got 1 minute left. The newsletter, thepropqueen.com. I've got all of my strikeout prop leans. It's a big list today. You could also, if you subscribe to Premium, can look at the strikeout prop spreadsheet, which is available for download. These are my Royal Locks. Best bets of the day, starting with Edward Cabrera to go over his 5.5 strikeout prop tonight. He's on the Marlins. He's hosting the Reds. Cabrera faced Washington and Arizona this season and punched out 5 Nats and 6 Cards. That's pretty good against 2 teams that strike out less than this Reds team. Last year, against strikeout-prone lineups, Cabrera averaged 6.5 strikeouts per start through 11 outings. At home, that number went up to just over 7 strikeouts a start. The Reds, a high K rate team, averaging 5.5 strikeouts a game against righty starters. I'm going with his over. And under, Padres righty Nick Pivetta under 6.5 Ks. This number is too high. we have not caught on yet to the Detroit Tigers and how they do not strike out against lefties. The only low K rate lineup Pivetta has faced this year was the Cubs. He had 4 and 6 strikeouts. Still not over 6.5. Last year, Pivetta went over 1 time, 6.5 strikeouts against the low K rate team. That was at home against the Blue Jays. This game on the road in Detroit, where lefty starters are most of them have gone under, averaging 4 strikeouts a game. I think it's 6 and 10. 4 strikeouts a game. Pivetta's on the road. 6.5 is way too high against this team. So take the under 6.5 strikeouts for Nick Pivetta. If you're watching on YouTube, or if you're not on YouTube, make sure to hit the subscribe button, please, on YouTube. I want all the subscribers. Gonna do some YouTube shorts as well around here. Gonna help build up the YouTube for sure. But thank you everybody for watching here on the Prop Queen Pod, wherever you are watching it. I'm Ariel Epstein, the Prop Queen, and we will be back here. I say we, there's no we, it's me. I will be back here tomorrow, 5 to 6 p.m. Eastern time. Until then, good luck with your bets.